A lot of aspiring writers approach me asking me how they would go about writing their first book. And the first thing I would tell them is that you have to be seriously committed to spending a lot of time in front of a keyboard because writing requires a serious commitment to time, and time is something a lot of people say that they don't have. And you're going to have to spend at least an hour or 2 hours a day in front of a keyboard just writing if you hope to become a serious writer. Because in order to write a book, you have to be able to put in the hours in front of that keyboard, putting together at least a chapter a day. Because whenever I'm writing a book like a Spinsterella or a novelette like A Man Who Rules the World, I'm at least spending at least an hour or 2 hours a day in front of a keyboard just writing one chapter a day. And eventually, I hope sometimes to get to finish that book in at least 30 days or so. And some stories, when I'm really passionate about it, I can do 3 or 4 chapters a day, but you're going to have to put in at least an hour a day in front of that keyboard writing on the regular. And that's just the start of that. In addition to the writing you're going to have to do, you're going to also have to put in the hours of research. And I usually spend about 5 days a week these days because I'm out of work at the library doing research on various subjects and various details in order to make the story appear more realistic in the imagination of the reader. And sometimes I'll go places to go see certain neighborhoods or certain buildings, like I did for the Cassandra Cookbook, where I went all the way to Brooklyn Heights and I looked at the buildings in the neighborhood. Or I'll go and go look at something in a supermarket or something like that, like a Fairway, to look at a certain food for a certain story. Or I'll be sitting there watching a lot of things like goth videos so I can learn more about the goth subculture, like I did for the Spinsterella novel. And I'll be doing all sorts of research so that all the details in the story can appear realistic in the imagination of the reader. And a lot of writers, they when they hear about the time that has to be committed towards doing the writing and the research, that's when they stop getting serious about being a writer, because in order to write stories, you have to do a lot of research and you have to do a lot of writing, and you also have to do a lot of reading, because again, in order to write a book like this or a book like this, it requires a lot of reading. I spend a lot of time reading different books, different articles, trying to make sure that if I'm writing a story, that I'm on point when I'm writing that story, and that I understand how to do things like with sentence structure and dialogue and other things that I do when I'm trying to learn how to write. Is I'm reading screenplays, or I'm watching movies so I can learn how different story models and different approaches to story are used. And if you're serious about being a writer, you're going to be doing all these things. And in addition to that, you will also be reading books about writing, like your Robert McKee story or your Sid Field screenplay. And that also is a big component in learning how to write books, because a lot of people, they just want to write a book because they want to, because it's something that they see people doing, but they don't understand, how much work is involved to get to finished products like these. A finished product like this book right here, this book took about a year and a half to write, and about a year and a half to do research on. And a book like Man Who Rules the World, which is the sequel to The Temptation of John Haynes, this book took at least, I've been trying to write this book for since 2010, when I finished publishing the original Temptation of John Haynes, when I started the publication schedule for that, because I started in 2010, started laying it out and stuff. And then I started trying to write this one, but then I wound up getting stuck. So then I had to put it down and then go and leave it alone for a while. Then I finally got the ideas for it. And then it took me a while to write it, a couple days on the first draft, but after that, it took me about 6 or 7 months to refine many of the sentence structures, the grammar, and the spelling, and make the book the first draft of the story, into something workable into a book. And then after you do those type of revisions, which may take 6 to 8 months, you have to do the page layouts. You have to do the page layouts, which are all this in here, and that's a lot of work. You have to do the page layouts because in order to get to your pages looking like that, you have to lay that out in first Microsoft Word. Then you have to go to Adobe Acrobat to make the PDF, and in order to make the completed book, you have to do things like this front matter. I designed the front matter like this, and then you have to lay out the back matter and then bring all that together for the finished PDF. So all those processes go in putting a book together. And a lot of writers who want to go into self-publishing, or they want to write a book or an ebook, they really don't understand the dedication that is required to time and commitment, and they think it's an easy process. And writing books, again, is not an easy process because you have to take it from concept to first draft to um, pages being laid out and then to finished book. So that process takes quite a bit of time, and a lot of people really don't want to take the time and commitment to go through that long process. However, if you go through that long process, eventually you will come out with finished books like these, and you will have something that you can share with your readers. And the reason why I am so dedicated towards producing and publishing different books is because I really want to create positive stories about the African American experience. I really want to share my stories with my readers, and I think that they'll get something out of the stories that I share with them. You can pick up books like Spinsterella and The Man Who Rules the World on Amazon.com in paperback and an ebook. And I'm hoping when you read them, you will appreciate the amount of work that goes into them, because each book that I put together takes at least 6 months to a year, or even 2 years, or even 5 years to put together. And what you read in a couple of days oftentimes took me over 6 to 8 months to 4 or 5 years to put together.